Number 10. Leah Davis Lokan. During a long-distance cycling trip earlier this year, 65-year-old Leah Davis Lokan stopped to rest in the small town of Ovando, Montana. The avid cyclist was traversing the Great Divide mountain bike route with her sister and a friend when they pitched their tent, hoping to catch some much-needed rest and relaxation. During the early morning hours, some campers nearby heard the horrifying sounds of a bear attack. They used bear spray to scare the animal away and dialed 911. Emergency responders found Lokan wounded and unfortunately failed to save her life, despite their best efforts. The bear had entered her tent and mauled her to death. Authorities began searching for the grizzly, who had also apparently entered a chicken coop and killed several chickens that night. They couldn't find the animal, but a few days after the attack, a resident shot and killed a 400-pound, 181-kilogram bear who was proving to be a nuisance around town. DNA tests later confirmed that it was the same bear that fatally attacked Lokan. There was no prior history of problems with the 6-year-old male grizzly, but officials suspected that he entered Ovando in search of food. It was the first fatal grizzly bear attack in the area in 20 years, and the second in 50 years. Number 9. The Johnson family. In 2015, Hannah Johnson and her boyfriend Thomas Camp decided to take a family camping trip in Tennessee Colony, Texas, on some land they had recently bought. They were joined by Camp's 2 adult sons, Nathan and Austin, Johnson's parents, Carl and Cynthia, and her 6-year-old son, Cade. Little did they know, the previous landowner was lurking. Angry that the property had a new owner, he was waiting for the perfect moment to get his revenge. While 4 of the campers were out looking for firewood, 33-year-old William Hudson shot them all to death. He then tossed their bodies into a pond nearby on the property. Then Hudson went to the family's campsite where he shot Hannah. He then attacked her father, Carl, shooting and beating him to death. Hannah's mother, Cynthia, hid behind some chairs until dawn and then sought help. She was the only survivor. Anderson County Sheriff Greg Taylor told a local TV station that it was the biggest massacre he had ever witnessed. During Hudson's trial, Cynthia recalled hearing her husband ask him why he was hurting them and saying that he thought they were friends. She said that she heard a fight going on inside the camper between Hudson and her husband. Hudson exited the camper, threw up, and walked toward her hiding spot, making her terrified that she was next. But he didn't notice her. Instead, he grabbed a beer out of a cooler just feet away from her, then sat down on the cooler and drank it. Then he went back inside the camper and finished beating Carl to death. Cynthia explained that Hudson had been unpleasant but helpful toward the family during a previous encounter when they got their truck and camper stuck in the mud. He had also volunteered to help his first 4 victims collect firewood the night he murdered them. When they were gone for over an hour, it was a little concerning to the group that had stayed behind, but when they heard gunfire, they assumed the men were just having fun. Little did they know, Hudson was headed their way next. A jury found Hudson guilty of 3 counts of capital murder. He was sentenced to death by lethal injection. Number 8. Alexander Lofgren and Emily Henkel. Alexander Lofgren and Emily Henkel were traveling through Death Valley together in April of this year when their Subaru got stranded in a very remote area. They tried reaching help on foot, but were no match for the harsh climate and the unforgiving terrain. When the couple failed to return from the trip, their loved ones alerted the authorities, who found the car with a note inside that said, 2 flat tires, headed to Mormon Point, have 3 days' worth of water. Rescue teams located Lofgren and Henkel later that day and made an aerial rescue attempt, but couldn't get to the pair. Emergency personnel finally reached the couple the next day. Sadly, by then, Lofgren had died from injuries he sustained on the arduous trek. Henkel suffered from a foot injury that required surgery, but was thankfully rescued. She later revealed to the press that Lofgren had lost his footing and fallen off a cliff to his death. It was the same cliff that Henkel hurt her ankle on, forcing her to survive. Injured and alone, until rescue arrived. Number 7. Triple tragedy. Over the summer of 2021, 3 young men named Dawson Brown, William Mays Jr., and Cole Sover attended a country music festival in Michigan. The trio stayed in a portable camper where they were found dead. 2 other men who were staying nearby were taken to the hospital in critical condition. An investigation found that they had all been exposed to carbon monoxide from a generator that was operating too closely to their campsites. It had leaked the odorless gas right in their direction, most likely killing Brown, Mays, and Sover in their sleep. Their deaths were found to be a tragic accident resulting from the camping spaces being crammed too closely together. As the campground's owner, Bob Rhon, pointed out to local station WNEM, even the most experienced campers can make simple mistakes that can end up costing them or someone else their lives. In cases like this, having a working carbon monoxide detector can be life-saving. And, as the situation proves, it's better to be safe than sorry, even when it comes to seemingly redundant precautions. Number 6. Crystal Turner and Killen Schultz. As the nation collectively held its breath hoping for missing vlogger Gabby Petito's safe return earlier this year, newlywed couple Crystal Turner and Killen Schultz were shot dead at their campsite in southeastern Utah. Police found their bodies in a creek riddled with gunshot wounds. The pair lived a bohemian lifestyle, traveling from campsite to campsite in their converted van, according to Schultz's aunt, Bridget Calvert, who spoke with NBC News following the double homicide. Co-workers and friends reported the couple missing when they failed to show up at work. Just days earlier, they had met with friends at a bar and mentioned a creepy man who was camping nearby and made them feel like they had to move their campsite. Calvert said it was unusual for Turner and Schultz to feel unsafe, considering how independent and accustomed to the great outdoors they were. In other words, they must have had a good reason for being on guard. They even made an offhanded comment that if they were murdered, the strange man was responsible for it. But in hindsight, nobody who knew the women thought they were serious about what they were saying. Authorities ruled out a possible connection to Gabby Petito's disappearance, but they've remained mostly quiet about the specifics of the case. It's been over 3 months since the murders, and investigators appear no closer to identifying or apprehending a suspect than they did at the very beginning. For now, all the public can do is wait and hope that whoever took the couple's lives is brought to justice before they harm anyone else. Number 5. The Phillips family. In mid-September, a New Zealand man named Thomas Phillips took his 3 kids on a weeks-long camping trip without telling loved ones about the plan. Relatives were alarmed by his swift departure with his 8-year-old, 6-year-old, and 5-year-old, especially since the nearby waters were rough. They found his abandoned vehicle near the beach and assumed the worst. A search initially proved fruitless, and it seemed to confirm the family's fears. But they clung to hope the best they could. Police suspended the search after 12 days, promising that they'd resume searching if any signs emerged that Phillips and his kids might be alive. Just when nearly all hope was lost, the family re-emerged. And it wasn't just Phillips's relatives who were frustrated by his decision to disappear for weeks and put them through 17 days of hell without telling anyone. The authorities charged him with causing wasteful deployment of police personnel and resources, which is understandable since the search had come at an enormous cost to taxpayers. The moral of the story? Maybe it's a good idea to tell your family where you're going before you go. Number 4. Camping near death's doorstep. Something that seems like an obvious danger to one person may not even cross another person's mind. Take, for example, a family who decided to camp just feet from the edge of a 280-foot, 85 meters cliff in North Yorkshire, England, earlier this year. A member of the public contacted emergency services after seeing the family's tent pitched perilously close to the steep drop. They were also in an area that's known for landslides and were perched in a spot that was dangerously unstable and prone to both collapse and landslides. A Facebook post by the country's Maritime and Coast Guard Agency revealed that the group consisted of 2 adults and 1 child, sending many social media users into a rage about the danger the youngster was in. On the other hand, one hiker and witness named Barbara Knaggs took a more compassionate approach, reminding others that nobody knew what the family's circumstances were and pointing out that they may have fallen on hard times. The Coast Guard rescue members who attended to the family offered them some wise advice about safe places to camp, and they also used the close call as an opportunity to give the same advice to the general public. Have you been camping? Would you need someone to let you know to steer clear of ledges and other dangerous camping spots? Let me know down below. Like and subscribe. Jonathon Gerrish and Ellen Chung. Jonathon Gerrish and Ellen Chung were an adventurous couple who didn't shy away from an unforgiving environment. But when they failed to return from hiking in the Sierra National Forest near Yosemite National Park in August, their nanny grew concerned and reported them missing. The next day, search and rescue workers found the couple, their 1-year-old daughter, Muji, and their dog dead. Investigators were perplexed by the scene, which displayed no obvious causes of death. They combed the area for clues and came up with nothing. Answers finally came in late October when the Mariposa County Sheriff's Office announced that the family had died from hypothermia and dehydration. Hypothermia is when the body's temperature rises to dangerously high levels, and it's rare for someone to die from it in Mariposa County, according to Sheriff Jeremy Breeze, who said this was the first case of its kind he's seen in 20 years. There are still lots of questions remaining for the family's relatives and loved ones who don't quite understand how things reached such a disastrous point, but they were grateful for the information that the investigation did come up with, which they said they'd use to help them come to terms with the more confusing aspects of the tragedy. Number 2. Cleo Smith. A parent's worst nightmare came true in October for the mother and father of a 4-year-old, Cleo Smith, who disappeared from her tent during a camping trip in Western Australia. She vanished with her sleeping bag, sparking a frantic 18-day search and a government reward of $1 million for information leading to her recovery. The investigation led police to a run-down house in Carnarvon, where they broke in at 1 in the morning and found the little girl safe and sound. She identified herself as Cleo Smith and was soon reunited with her parents. Authorities have remained somewhat quiet about the circumstances surrounding the ordeal, but they did say that 36-year-old Terrence Darrell Kelly was taken into custody and charged in connection to Cleo's disappearance, and that the family doesn't know him. Kelly's cousin told Channel 9 that he had a bizarre upbringing and had recently grieved the loss of the woman who raised him after he was removed from his unfit mother's care. While this certainly doesn't excuse his actions, it could possibly offer some insight into why he abducted this innocent little girl. Woman survives months in the wilderness. A woman who went missing in November of 2020 was found in May of this year after surviving on her own in a canyon outside Salt Lake City, Utah, for 5 months. Rangers found her car abandoned around Thanksgiving of last year and failed to find her until the drone they were searching with crashed and forced them to enter the canyon on foot. When they went to retrieve the drone, they spotted her tent, which they initially assumed was abandoned. But then the woman stuck her head out to say hello. After months of surviving on grass, moss, and stream water, the woman was underweight and weak. Her co-workers told police that they suspected that she was battling mental health issues before she disappeared, leading them to believe that she actually chose to live in the canyon and perhaps wasn't necessarily lost. She was taken to a hospital for an evaluation. The Utah County Sheriff's Office commended the woman's survival skills and stressed the fact that she didn't do anything against the law, however concerning her situation might be. They also said that she might choose to return to the area and that they've offered her any resources she may need. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Bye for now.